If you freeze when it's time to take a financial leap, this episode will help you tap into the courage you need to move forward. We're going straight into how women make big money decisions without getting lost in fear or second guessing, even when there are major hurdles along the way. My guest is Kristin Stampini, a powerhouse entrepreneur who's built an 8-figure business and a serious real estate portfolio by leaning into her instincts and letting her experiences guide her forward. She's living proof that you don't need a perfect plan to build real wealth. You need the willingness to act and the discipline to keep going and keep learning even when the obstacles get in the way. Kristin grew up without financial safety. She rebuilt her life more than once. She learned money through experience, grit, and earned wisdom. And now she's even building a house in Greece that she plans to live in for 4 months out of the year. She is willing to take on demanding projects and visions to fulfill the life that she wants and utilizes building wealth and creating income streams along the way. Today, we talk about what it takes to get comfortable with money, how to rebuild trust after setbacks, how to evaluate opportunities without thinking, and how to move from survival mode into street smart wealth that creates real freedom. This is the Women Growing Wealth podcast, and I'm your host, Tamar Hermes. If you've been listening to the podcast weekly, or you're just tuning in now and loving the content, please leave us a 5-star review so we can help get this information out to more and more women. Now, if you're ready for a conversation that makes you want to act instead of just think, this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Women Growing Wealth podcast. I am super excited today because we're going to be diving into how do you go from 0 to beyond 8 figures, and how do you do that when you are having the odds stacked against you. And we're going to get into a bunch of different strategies around this with my friend Kristin Stampini, who's here. Welcome, Kristin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited today.
I'm so thrilled. I really want to get started talking about your story because you are someone who really started building your wealth. You started from 0 at the age of 40. And I'd love for you to share your story for any listeners that one are thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not going to be able to build wealth at this point in my life, get to the place where I want to be, to show them that they can. And for any younger listeners that are already making great money, but are still thinking, okay, how does this translate into wealth? So please share with us, how did this happen? How did you get beyond 8 figures here?
Okay, thank you. So after I graduated from college, I actually ran restaurants for about 18 years. And what I did is I was the general manager of restaurants, and I would move from restaurant to restaurant, which is very common in the restaurant industry. And I didn't have a family. I wasn't married at the time. And it was just a lot. It was a lot to run a restaurant and keep moving. So in 10 of the years, I moved 14 times, which is crazy, right? Worse than the military, I think. And so I said, I can't really live my life this way anymore. And I was actually approaching the age of 40. And I had gone into a really dark place in my life, and I was alone. And I moved to Florida to go ahead and start over. The only person in Florida was my mom. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I ended up having to claim bankruptcy and actually even got my car repoed. So you want to talk about starting over right before the age of 40. That's what happened. And I was single.
Now, how
So
did you hang on? I want to let me get into this. Okay, so you were making decent money as a restaurateur. Like you obviously didn't own the restaurants, but you were operating, and that takes a lot. So, how did you end up from there to actually having to get to a point of declaring bankruptcy, which we know is truly a starting over?
yeah. Well, it was because the money I was making in the restaurant, after the restaurant, I ended up starting to wait tables to try to figure out what my next steps were. So I couldn't keep up with my bills. I was by myself paying my own bills. And it was just, I just couldn't see a way out at the time. And it was quite a long time ago because it was about 2008. So it was easier to start over then, as far as, as literally starting over. So I said to myself, and my credit card bills were, a couple thousand a month, and I wasn't even paying them down. So it was that dire, need for me to get a fresh start. So I was able to do that.
So this is also a great point, is just talking about those credit cards and how credit cards don't enable you to move forward. Whenever I meet any woman that tells me, hey, I want to invest and I have credit card debt, I always say, hang on, are you paying that 20% plus annualized on those credit cards? If you are, then pay those off first. That is not good debt.
Yeah, I agree. And after I was able to start over and claim bankruptcy and literally starting over, I have never paid interest on a credit card since. So I really learned from that. And I never really started investing, right, until I had enough money to do it. So that's another thing. But when I had started over, I was almost 40 years old. So I said, what am I going to do? The only person I knew was my mom in Florida, and that's where I moved. I moved into a 600 square foot place with no washer and dryer, went to the laundromat. I mean, I roughed it, right? And I did that because I knew that I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do, but pay as little as possible so I could start saving up for what my next thing was. So my mom had said to me, why don't you get into real estate, selling real estate? And I said, wow, I can't see myself being a salesperson. But I did. I ended up getting into real estate, but I didn't know anybody, right? The only person I knew was my mom. So I ended up waiting tables at the restaurant to pay my bills, minimal bills right now. And then I got my real estate license and I said, okay, what am I going to do next? I need to hire a coach. So I hired a coach right away, but I took all the money I was making from the restaurant and put it into real estate. So I ended up working both of those jobs at the time for about 3 years. So I was working 80 plus hours a week for 3 years to get myself up, running, figuring out how to actually do real estate without knowing anybody. Because, people in real estate, they usually know somebody, right? So they can get referrals and things like that. Well, I didn't. So I had to literally hire a coach, figure out how to do marketing way back then. And that's how it all started. And fortunately, it was during the short sale, in foreclosure, right? Back in 2008 to 12. And I'm here in Florida. So I live in Florida and it was bad, right? The short sales were bad here. So the thing is because I was just going through a rough time in my life. Short sales aren't regular real estate. So I thought, okay, let me really learn short sales because nobody knows it pretty much. And let me help these people who are in a really tough situation. Well, I had people literally calling me because of my marketing. I had people calling me and saying, wow, God sent me to you. Seriously, it was like I was sent to you for a reason, for you to help me. And I felt it. And so what ended up happening, I was able to get so many people out of trouble in the short sale market. And that's where my journey started in making a lot of money. And it wasn't, but I didn't look at it. And I think this helped a lot too. I wasn't in real estate looking at it as how much money I could make then. It was how many people I could help.
I love that. And the other thing that I hear is that at the time when you had moved to Florida and you were really having this kind of life crisis of, oh my God, is this my life? I'm alone. I don't have money. I don't like my job anymore. And you weren't necessarily even thinking about wealth on your radar. But what you did lead with, which we know is really the key to wealth, to anything great in life really, is putting other people ahead and seeing how we can serve. And it also fills our souls. I love
That's
that
right.
you did that.
And so I felt it, and they did too, because they weren't paying my real estate commissions. It was the banks that were paying my real estate commissions. So I looked at it that way. Instead of how much money could I make, it was how could I serve? Right. And in return, I ended up doing really, really well. And then I ended up starting a real estate team, which is really common today to have a real estate team, because I got so busy, I needed help. Right. So I couldn't work with all the buyers and all the sellers, and I needed assistance. And that's how it all started into building my real estate team. And then at one time, I had 13 agents on my team. So they were working with buyers and sellers. I was bringing in the leads. And this is obviously over the years. And then I would start saving money. And once I was saving money from the commissions, then I bought my first real estate. I bought my first investment property. So I ended up buying my first investment property actually before I started buying my first home at this time in Florida, because I was able, I wasn't able to, I didn't have any credit, right? I had to build my credit back up, but I was able to save enough cash to go ahead at the time because there were so many deals out there. So I was able to buy, some real estate that I still own today because it was so cheap. And that's where the journey began. It began with me just literally hustling, starting over, and then figuring out once I started making money. Because I said to myself, restaurant management, I did that and worked 70 to 80 hours a week. That's how hard that is.
And how much
So
were you making? How much money did you
I was making literally less than 100,000 a year. And, this is quite a long time ago, but, that's not a lot of money, right? And I ended up when I started over, I was making like 32,000. Okay. So that's a big difference too. So I started making 32,000, and then it just started gradually going up. But then I said to myself, wow. And I think the reason, because people always say to me, how did you become so successful in real estate? And how were you able to build a team? And how did you know how to do that? And I coach real estate as well. And I've done that for 15 years. And the reason why is because of the restaurant business. I really feel that was the experience that I got, because I was running restaurants like Cheesecake Factories, J. Alexander's, which are very similar to Houston's restaurant and stuff. But you really learn business when you're running corporations. You're learning the business aspect, right? So I'm learning how much I'm learning the numbers. I'm learning what I need to do to make the right numbers. It's the same thing in any business. So what I learned for so many years, I was able to apply it to real estate. And I think that's the reason why, is I knew how much money for me to grow the team. I knew how many leads I needed. I knew how many I had to convert. I knew I needed to train. I knew I needed to free up my time, because if I was just working with, buyers and sellers, I was only able to work with a few, right? But if I was able to grow a team, and when I was training everybody else how to do it, and I could really run the operations, then I could build. And that's what I did. And, selling hundreds of homes a year, making millions of dollars. And then my second coach came in 2020. So I saw that, wow, we paid a lot of money in taxes. We owned a few. And in the meantime, my husband comes. Okay. So he came after I had started the real estate. He was in mortgages. He was working for Washington Mutual, boyfriend at the time, right? And Washington Mutual shut down, right? So he came to help. He came to bail me out, help me out. And in the meantime, he's like, I'm just going to stay with you a short amount of time. And we've been together ever since. So
I love that. I love that. Now, one of the things that I think happens when we go from making a lot of money to building wealth is there has to be a shift inside of how we're able to hold money. And you talked about how when you were in the restaurant business, you were making about 100,000 and it wasn't going that far, especially when you were thinking in terms of how am I going to actually live out the rest of my life? Am I going to be working in this restaurant, or how can I create more freedom for myself, for my life? Now, when you started making more and more money, when you started building the teams and taking on more and more, Was there a shift that needed to happen for you in order to realize, hey, who I was is not going to get me to where I'm going? And you obviously made that transition beautifully. Obviously it wasn't all smooth sailing, but the way that you kept expanding and being able to take in more money. Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah. So when I started, I knew that real estate also was not where I wanted to stay in working with buyers and sellers. I had worked 18 years so hard. And in working in real estate, anybody who's a realtor out there that's, that actually does, quite a few deals, they know how hard work that is. And I refuse to make that my life. So I started my vision at the very beginning of real estate. And I said to myself, I need to figure this out. I need to figure out how I can grow the business, invest back into the business, and then start investing in other things. If it's going to be other companies, real estate. And I said, okay, we're going to invest in both. We're going to do both, right? We're going to do some stocks. We're going to do some private money. So we have it very diversified. And I just started thinking to myself, and I learned, right? So I started watching podcasts, reading books. I started listening to people that were where I wanted to be, right? I started to be around the right people. But I knew right at the beginning when I saw how hard real estate was, I knew it was not where I was going to stay. I knew that was not what I was going to do, but I knew that I could use it to go to where I wanted to be.
So as the money was coming in and more money and you were building a larger team, you were looking at it more in terms of, okay, what is my ultimate vision and where am I going? I love this for now. So it sounds like you weren't that attached to really the money. You were more attached to the concept of freedom and what that would get you. And that was kind of the end game. And I get that deeply because for me, everything was always about freedom and I didn't have a lot of
That was
resources.
100.
That was it for me. So it's very interesting. And did you find was your mom that way? I mean, did she have freedom or was she kind of,
No.
so she also was from that time when it was just, you did what you kind of were told to do. And that was kind of what life gave you.
Well, she always wanted to have successful businesses and stuff, but she didn't do, and I love my mom dearly. She's passed, but she just didn't do the work. Like anybody who owns businesses knows how hard it is. It's so hard. And she wanted it and everything, but she didn't want to do the work that it took. And I think because of my restaurant, because I worked so much back in the days of the restaurant business, and I actually grew up working really hard, from the age of 14, started working and all the way through college and stuff, that I wasn't afraid to work really hard, right? So especially because of the restaurant business, that when I get into this, I was like, wow, this is hard work, but this is also taking up my nights, my weekends. Everything that I did in the restaurant business, I'm repeating itself in real estate. And I saw it really quickly, but I also saw very quickly that I could use this as a way to get to where I wanted to go.
I love that. And there's a huge distinction there for me. You left a W-2 position where you were earning 100,000 a year. Part of the reason why you're saying it's not a lot of money is because you're being taxed at close to 40, 50%, which really reduces that. And then you go to being a business owner where you might be working as hard, but at least you're able to expand and grow the income and have some sense of there being no ceiling.
Yep. That's exactly right. And so I saw that. At first, when I got into real estate, my vision was to make a couple $100,000 a year. That was really it. You are so right. It was not about how much money I was making. It wasn't even about wealth building. It was not about any of that. It was literally, how can I make a couple $100,000 or a couple $100,000 a year and live comfortably? And that, as I got into it, then everything started opening up. I started, my mind was working different. I was thinking different. I was looking at all the opportunities there were. I was helping people, because I was coaching too. So like I said, I've been coaching for 15 years and in coaching in real estate. So I would watch and help everybody grow. We would all do it, all be growing together. But I saw how much that I could help other people grow through my team, my real estate team. And once I started really making a lot of money, I was like, wow, what can I do with this besides giving back? Because I think giving back is so important. And I've always loved to help people and help kids and things like that. Then I saw, okay, obviously being in real estate, I thought, okay, I need to own some real estate. Well, I didn't realize that owning real estate doesn't really start your wealth. Then I realized that owning businesses will start wealth, and real estate help with taxes. So it was kind of like a transition. So I just tried to learn from the best people. So in 2020, I hired somebody who could, because once we paid a lot of money in taxes in 2019, I said, okay, we got to figure that. And we owned quite a few properties at that time. And I said, but we were paying still way too much.
You still couldn't offset enough of the taxes.
No, we're talking a lot.
Well, as I always say, it's first world problems. It's a good problem to have. And you start to look at, okay, are there legal ways in which I can put even more into the system and offset this bill to create more jobs, to create more commerce, all of the things?
So that's when I hired a second coach, and I was looking at doing some flipping and wholesaling and different things like that as well. And he's like, no, you guys have the money to invest. So he's still a coach today, but one of our coaches today, but we started investing in syndications. We started investing in other properties, but we also have a business, we have a virtual assistant company, and we have short-term and long-term rentals. And we started investing in stocks and bonds, private money, doing a lot of different private money and stuff. So we're very, very diversified now.
I love that.
Right?
I love that. And we'll get into all of that. First, I want to dive back into, you said something that was interesting. You said, I realized I could save taxes with real estate. And I realized that owning a business would make me even more money. Now, let's talk about how that journey went, because there's a lot of women listening where they maybe have a business or two, and maybe they have some real estate, but they're thinking, how can I scale this? How can I make more antennas? Like you're talking about all those diversified streams. So how did you get into business? What choices did you make? And let's talk about that.
So the first thing I did is I started buying real estate properties, right? So we had owned, I think in 2020, I don't remember, we had bought and sold a few, and then we probably had a dozen-ish maybe at that time. And so we were definitely, because we were in real estate too, we get better write-offs, right? Because we are considered real estate
professional, real estate reps, real estate professional status.
Yeah, but it just wasn't enough. And so once we started so we opened up a real estate brokerage, for example, so we could write off more. Every business that you own, you get to write off so much, right? So, and then we're managing our own properties, right? Because then you can write off more. We were doing syndications, and they were just better. We were everything that we could think of as far as owning companies and building companies plus building wealth is how we ended up doing. We still, there's a lot of people out there that they zero all their taxes legally, of course, and we still pay a bit of taxes, but we don't do it all the way that people say that you should do it. So for example, a lot of our properties, and I don't necessarily say that everybody should do this, but a lot of our properties are owned cash. We own them cash. We haven't taken money out and borrowed against it and everything else. And a lot of people are like, why? Why would you not, have a lot more millions of dollars in it? Because I haven't found what I wanted to do it with. So one of the things we're looking at is shopping centers. We were looking at some other businesses. So we're kind of looking at some businesses to buy currently. And that's why we still have money into our properties and haven't taken it out. And here in Florida, you pay a lot in insurance and taxes and everything when you own properties. So, there's a lot of reasons why, but we just decided for us that we don't need all of our properties to have And we have a couple dozen now, but we don't need them all to have mortgages.
I love that you're sharing this, and it's very important because these are all choices that we make as we are building our portfolio, as we are wealth building. And I always tell my clients, hey, it's a personal choice. It depends
Yeah.
on your comfort level. It depends on what your objectives are. Are you in a growth space? Are you in a place where you have enough income and you don't need to leverage those properties? Are you in a place where just you could turn off that knob at any time and just live off that cash flow? Because when we don't have mortgages, the mortgage just comes, that is paid income to the owner. And so that's actually not, I understand and respect that choice for sure. I think it absolutely, I love that you brought that in the conversation, because you're right. A lot of people will say, why aren't you leveraging that? Why don't you have your tenants pay the mortgage? Well, they're paying you. And that's great too. And then of course we're hoping for the appreciation and for the other benefits for owning the properties. So that's all great. I want to get into the business that you own, that you scaled, the virtual assistant business. And it sounds like, in addition to real estate and the syndications and the Airbnbs, all the other things that you've done, the actual business that you really created and dove into is this virtual business. I'd love to hear, how did you start that business? What was the idea? And then how did you scale that business?
Yeah, that's great. So back when I was growing really fast in the real estate business, and this was a down market, right? This was the toughest market until the last couple of years. And I needed people to help me, but I couldn't, so everything I was trying to, so much of what I was making, I was investing back in the business, right? So I didn't show a lot of income because it was going back into the business. But the thing is I didn't have enough money to hire all the people I needed. So like when Mark, who is now my husband, when he came and helped me out, he was able to help me out in a lot of areas, but it wasn't enough because I was building, like I was taking 15 to 20 listings a month and I was working with buyers. And I mean, it was just a lot. And so I needed people that could help me with my marketing, that could help me with my inside sales, that could set up appointments for me, that could be general administrative, my executive assistant, my customer service, all of these people. And I didn't have the money to borrow or take from anything because of course claiming bankruptcy doesn't just allow you to go out and borrow a couple $100,000 to open this business. I literally had to be creative in how I was going to run it, right? So I'm like, I had seen at a real estate convention I was at, I had seen that they had virtual assistants at a company there like ours today. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And this is before before virtual assistants were ever about, right? People didn't know about virtual assistants really.
This is like Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week, when everyone was like, what?
Yeah.
What? You have
Yeah.
somebody overseas that's helping you with your work? What?
Yeah. So I said, wow, I wonder if I could figure this out. And I got it. And because I'm very service industry driven just from being in the restaurant business for so long. So if I was going to hire these people, they had to perform at the level I needed to perform at, right? Which is going to be high service driven. And I could train them and things like that because I'd done that over many years in the restaurant business, but I didn't know how am I going to leverage them, not working here because our virtual assistants are in the Philippines. And I was like, how am I going to do all this? So I started with one, and it was pretty much an executive assistant. Or an assistant.
Now tell me there was a little trial and error, because
a lot of trial. Oh yeah.
Because if you tell me you hired like 30 people and it was all smooth sailing,
It was horrible. It was horrible because I had no idea what I was doing. And it was terrible at first, but I was like, I got to make this work because it financially was what I could afford because I needed multiple people. And I didn't know how to get multiple people for the amount of money I had. I couldn't do it any other way. Like I didn't have the money. So anyways, the first one was obviously very, very challenging, But the one thing I am is I'm systems driven. So have the minds, because of opening up restaurants and doing all that. It was all about systems and processes and, and expectations and results and accountability. And so that's where I'm saying that the restaurant business really helped me, because I knew all of those things. I just didn't know how to make it work with a virtual assistant. So I'm like, okay, well, first I need a job description. I need to figure that out. Now I'm going to be communicating with them in a different country. And how are they going to be really service driven? And how are they going to not mess up, and how am I going to? So I built checklists. I built things that, I first figured out, what could I take off my plate that wasn't going to affect a client? Okay. What could I take off my plate? So I went and I figured it out. I jotted down for a week everything that I did. And I said, okay, these are things that I can take off my plate that I can train somebody else to do. And then I'll have more time to do more building the business and more of the money producing activities, as well as the marketing and sales. So that's what I did. So that was my first one. Definitely multiples were learning experiences, very much so learning experiences. But once I started building the systems out to figure it out, I was like, wow, this was powerful, because I was able to hire about 4 for the price of 1 here. And that for me was so important, because I didn't know how else to do it, because I didn't have the money and I didn't have the credit to do it. Right. So how else was I going to do it? And that's how it built out. Well, because of coaching and everything, people are like, wow, you have done incredible. Because I had like 12, eventually I had like 12 at one time that were running all different aspects of the business. And people are like, I can't believe you're doing this. You need to open up a company that does this. That's really how it started. And I'd gone to the Philippines a couple of times to meet with our team. And I decided, you know what, let me try it, because all these people wanted to do the same thing, but they just didn't know how. And that's when, we started and we grew, and we've gotten really big. We have hundreds of virtual assistants now, and we help business owners. We don't help just real estate. We started in real estate because it's what we knew, but now we help all kinds of business owners do the exact same thing as we do. But the other thing that's great is with AI, our virtual assistants are AI driven. So what that means to business owners is that we do all the training of the virtual assistants all the time on the AI training. So they don't have to learn it all, because daily it's changing, right? AI is changing so much. And it's too hard for the business owners to stay on top of it all. So what we do is we stay on it, and we train the virtual assistants that can help. So now virtual assistants can do so much more than they used to be able to do because of AI. So they're running AI, the virtual assistants are.
And I love that so much too, because what you're doing also is you're supporting others to still help business owners by utilizing AI, as opposed to hearing all these stories where employees are being replaced. You're making the employees valuable by understanding AI and being able to support the business owner. Because at the end of the day, while AI really does speed things up, there is implementation. There are systems that need to be created inside of AI. So it's not that easy to just think, oh, well, AI is just going to take over, because we still need to.
Nervous, right? So Dan, do you know who Dan Martell is?
Of course.
Okay. So a few months ago, we were with Dan Martell, and because he's working with like 1,000 different AI companies, right? And I said to him, what is going to happen with virtual assistants? And this was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And he said, they need to be in managerial roles. They're not going to go away if they learn these things to help, because AI can't do it by itself. It has to have somebody who's running it. The business owners, their best use of their time is not learning all the AI tools and how to use it. They still need to run their businesses, but they need somebody who can come in and help them utilize all the AI tools. And that's what virtual assistants need to do for them. So that's really when we started diving straight in to AI and to helping, because he's a great mentor as well, right, Dan?
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that's kind of how that's all come about. And we love our virtual assistant company. It's definitely our number one thing that we do today.
I love that. And one of the things I talk a lot about with my group is having a baseline. Actually, I share it with any woman that will listen to me is get a baseline, because otherwise you're just chasing more for more sake. I call that our enough number. I take into account inflation, time,
Yeah.
investing, and of course, hello, tax savings.
Yeah.
So these
Right.
four things, because what happens is once I feel like women know their enough number, then they have a sense where they can make decisions based on more in terms of, okay, whether or not I want to actually pay cash for this property or
That's
whether or
right.
not I want to leverage, because I know, okay, I have a gap in my enough number. So I probably want to hit my enough number a little sooner. So I might want to leverage a little bit more. Now, do you have a sense of your enough number? Because it sounds to me you've well surpassed it. You're definitely financially free based on what you've created. Did you at one point have the enough number? Did you have your version of it later on?
That's a great question. So, because of where I was not that long ago, every year it's changed. Not every year, every couple of years, maybe everything's changed, right? In my vision. So, for example, I had lived in Boca Raton, Florida for many, many, many years. And my husband and I wanted to move to the Florida Keys full time, but there aren't jobs there, right? So it's all remote. You have to do it remote. But we wanted to live on the ocean in the Florida Keys and live that life. And we wanted to live in the country of Greece. So then we could travel Europe. So that just came about 4 years ago, maybe, where we decided, hey, it's a big life-changing thing, right? So of course, we thought, are we going to have multiple homes there or build a hotel? Are we going
In
to
Greece.
build a resort? Build a resort. So, what were we going to do? And we're going to have our home is supposed to be built and it's supposed to be done in April, but I think for sure next summer. And we'll be there 4 months a year, right? It'll be separating 2 months and 2 months. So that was my number one thing, was to make sure that I wanted to live my life the way I wanted to live it, financially free. So when you say that, I look at my finances now, and I didn't until about 3 or 4 years ago. I looked at them like every quarter, like where we were at with all of our investments and stuff. And now I look at it and I say, okay, we've got the money we need to invest and live off of just the money we make. And we're able to do that today. So we don't, I can't believe it. I can't believe I had just even said that, but I look at it every month now, right? So one of the big things that we do is private money, and we have a lot of private money out, and we make anywhere between, and this is our comfort, right? So we make anywhere between 12% and 25%, which is a lot, right? Back on all of our private money, minimum is 12, then we have 20%, and then we have 25%. Okay. The 12 is great because we're in first position on homes. If they don't pay us, we get the homes. Okay. So those are great. And because we're in real estate, it works for us. We know how much the homes are worth and we know what we're investing in. Right.
Right. I'm so glad
Then
you explained that for anyone listening thinking, wait, what? She's making 12 to 25%. Not only is she making that kind of money, but she's actually securing that loan. She's actually mitigating the risk. That's probably safer than almost keeping it in a bank, sitting there
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
earning nothing, because she gets a note to a property that
Mhm.
she knows is worth more than what she's lending on. So what she's saying is that Kristin is saying, if that property is defaulted on that loan, that she legally has a right to take over that property.
Yeah. And so we have a lot of money into that, but it's probably 60%, like not 60% of what we own, but 60%. So when if we buy a property at 200,000, it's going to be worth about 40% more than that. So it's very secure. And that's at 12%. And I say, I love that because I'm not making, or the risk is to us is not there. The 20% that we loan on, when people are loaning, I think you really have to have a really good intuition on who you're working with, gut,
Always.
like, don't just go and invest with somebody that is just starting out. This guy has been in the business for a very, very long time, has an amazing reputation, and he has never defaulted on a loan. Okay. So he's giving us 20%, but we're in second position. But which he owns homes, like he owns, like his house is worth a few million and he owns that outright. I don't know why, but so he personally what's it called? Put a personal behind it.
Guaranteed. The loan.
Guarantee that behind it. He put personal guarantee. So that's that one. And then the other one is a big that we make 25% on. And he is a big developer in Nashville, Tennessee. So we bought our home that's waterfront in the community. It's beautiful. He still is selling a few here. And he also put personal guarantee on it. And we loaned him a lot of money as well. So all of that in itself, if you figure out, so I figured out, okay, what do I want to live off of? How much money per year, right? How much money do I want to make per year to be able to give, to give to charities, to live off of, to live comfortably, our lifestyle that we live now, because it's not, our lifestyle is expensive. I mean, we have a couple homes that we don't rent out at all. We've got second homes. We got our home in Greece. We got our home in the Keys. I mean, that's a lot, right? That we don't rent out. And we've got another one. And then the travel we want to do, the things we want to do or whatever, how much do I want to live on? And that is what we make more than that just on what we have now.
Yeah.
What I
share, yeah, I love this because what I share with women is that at a certain point, when you have that enough number, you can see if you have $5 million and let's say you're making 10% for easy math, that's a $500,000 a year. You're not breaking into that 5 million. You're living off that interest. Now you need to take into account inflation, of course, because that's the one lever that we truly don't have a lot of control over. We need to be mindful of it. But that is one of the things that, Kristin, you're displaying so beautifully. And I love the fact that you're not limiting yourself. You really it sounds like you really sit down with your husband and you dream and you think about, wow, what would be just a great life for us? And I love that you picked Greece of all places. I don't know how you came up with, maybe you visited and just loved it.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And we love Europe. So traveling Europe when we're in Greece just made sense, right?
Absolutely.
And so I look at it, when I'm in Greece, I work 5 hours a week.
That's great. Wow. Look at that. That's amazing. I love that you can allow yourself to do that. That's huge. Because most of us as women, we believe that we need to work hard in order to earn it. And that struggle is a hard one to let go of.
I think the other reason why is because I know how important it is. If you guys own businesses or whatever, having a good team and building a good team is so important. And if you ever are thinking about, I want to maybe build my business and then sell it, they don't want the CEO involved. Mm-hmm. So this makes our team step up. You know what I mean? Because if I were here all the time, I would be involved much, much more. But this makes them do it. And then if we ever want to sell at some point, they don't want the CEO involved, and I'm not. I can totally step out. So there's a lot of reasons why we built it that way. But once you build a really, really good team, that's the key to being able to, to have your time freedom, right?
I love that. Amazing. Amazing. Gosh, there's so much we can do here. I feel wealthier just speaking with you. So tell me, if there's one thing that you would want to leave women with from listening to this podcast, what would be your message to them?
So if you are trying to figure out, what do I want to invest in? I have some money. I don't really know. I think you need to learn about the different things that you're considering. So for example, one of the things I was considering is storage units, right? But at the time when I figured out in laundromats, I couldn't make enough money, right? I looked at storage units and it was not once I read and talked to a lot of people who have storage units, it was not what I was looking for at the time. I think whatever it is, figure out your niche. I think diversifying is the way to go, but make sure you educate yourself enough on those things. Find the people who are doing it really, really well and ask questions. And don't just dive in because, somebody told you this and because we did that too, right? So we did some syndications that we just invested in. They are not great. I'm just hoping to make my money back on. If I would have known 4 years ago what I knew today, syndications is definitely not something that we want to do. Another thing that we don't want to do is, and we just started doing those like 5 years ago, and we're going to sell in the next couple of years, are Airbnbs. Do not like Airbnbs. Do not like the Airbnbs at all. So that's another thing. I think that's what I can say is figure out your tolerance on risk, your risk tolerance. So I do some high level risk tolerance, and most of it's not, though. Most of my risk tolerance is not high. So figure that out and figure your numbers, know your numbers, like know what you need to make, and make sure that to figure out your retirement or whatever your number, like you were talking about. And what does that look like? And how are you going to get? The biggest thing also is hire mentors, hire coaches, hire people that can help you get to where you want to be.
I love it. So good. Great testimonial for me too.
Yeah.
We
True.
didn't plan this.
True. But it's
Great.
so true. You need somebody that you can trust that can help you get to where you want to go. And you are definitely a person that can do that for people. 100%.
I love that. Now, there's so many things that you offer other people, and I would love for you to share, how can I figure out where I go to get virtual assistants, and how can I connect with Kristin Stampini?
So our company is called Stamp Staff, and you can look us up there, stampstaff.com. You can reach out to me at 561-221-2292 is my office. That's my office, but I get the messages as well. You can reach out to me directly on social media, Kristin Stampini. I respond to everybody on social media. So I'm very good at responding on social media. I have my virtual assistant company is really what we focus on today, is the virtual assistant company and helping people grow their companies through virtual assistants. And I feel that we do a really, really good job because both my husband and I are so passionate at helping others grow their companies like we have through virtual assistants.
I love it. Gosh, thanks, Kristin, for being here. You are just so amazing. So many ideas. If you are watching Women Growing Wealth, please subscribe so you don't miss anything. Once a week, I have a new podcast and YouTube episodes come out. And if you're listening on the podcast, please leave me a review. I would love it so much. It really helps other women find this resource. And I appreciate all of you. And here is to all of us growing wealth.
Thank you so much for doing this for the women out there. I mean, this is amazing.
Thanks.
Thank you
Kristin.
so much. Thank you.